Hello, Virgo, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back once again to my channel. If you're new to the channel, I certainly appreciate both your viewership as well as your subscriptions, okay? So today, Virgos, I am going to focus solely on your romantic situation, but I have a treat for you guys today. I'm going to be utilizing my Romeo and Juliet cards today. Because let's face it, Virgos, you've been star-crossed. You've been betrayed. You've been called all sorts of names here. So I'm going to go on just to see what Spirit has to say when it comes to the overarching energy surrounding your situation. Okay? I'm going to revisit your past, fast forward to your present, and share with you a probable outcome should you continue on as you are. But before getting into this reading, I don't want to assume that each and every one of you knows the Romeo and Juliet play here. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary, ladies and gentlemen, and then we're going to go on and just dive right on deeply into this reading. And if it resonates, Virgos, please like and share. Okay? So, set against the backdrop of an ancient blood feud in Verona, Shakespeare tragedy follows Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet, two teenagers who fall into a sudden forbidden love that defies their warring families. After a secret marriage facilitated by Friar Lawrence, their hope for peace is shattered when Romeo is exiled for killing Juliet's cousin, Tybalt, in a heat of vengeful passion. Desperate to avoid a forced marriage to another man, Juliet takes her own death with a sleeping potion. But a catastrophic failure in communication leads Romeo to believe she is actually dead. He takes his own life at her side, and upon waking to find her lover dead, Juliet follows suit. It is only through this ultimate heartbreaking sacrifice that the grieving Montagues and Capulets finally agree to end their senseless feud. Okay? So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go on and just shuffle up here. And we're going to, as I said, see what the overarching energy is surrounding you. And we're going to kind of utilize, as I said, the attributes from Romeo and Juliet with quotes and all of that to kind of relate it to your situation here. Okay. So let's go on and just get started here. We're going to start off with our first card here. We have, ladies and gentlemen, wow, poison. Okay. So this is the energy surrounding you, and this is all about something being very harmful, something destructive. And the quote here reads, "If you had the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you straight." And so you're wondering, what in the hell does this mean? So this line, ladies and gentlemen, is spoken by the desperate apothecary to Romeo in Act 5, Scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet, as he hands over the lethal dram, carries an immense chilling finality. Okay? So, if we were to kind of match a tarot card to this quote here, we would have the Tower. The Tower fits in perfectly here. Though a few sharp minor arcana cards mirror its deadly physical reality perfectly too as well here. So here is how, ladies and gentlemen, the archetypes align with the apothecary's warning here, as I just read to you. Okay, we have the Tower. And most of us know that the Tower represents sudden, catastrophic, and irreversible ruin. Okay? So when the apothecary tells Romeo that the poison will dispatch you straight regardless of physical power, he is describing the exact mechanics of the tower, right? The illusion of strength. The quote explicitly states that even the strength of 20 men cannot withstand this force. The tower is famous for tearing down structures built on false security or ego. So this is something that's surrounding you guys here. I'm seeing some of you might experience some sort of a tower moment, or someone is going through one. Okay? Human might, status, and physical strength mean absolutely nothing when lightning strikes, right? And then we have sudden ruin. You know, the phrase dispatch you straight. That underscores the immediate, violent, and absolute nature of the card here. There's no negotiation, no slow decline, and no recovery. You know, it is an instant demolition of the physical vessel here. So let's go on and just match this to a few other cards here with the swords and cups here. Okay? We have the Ten of Swords here. So some of you might have, it looks like someone gets stabbed in the back. I'm seeing ultimate betrayal here. Okay? Because we have both the Tower and the Ten of Swords here. Okay? Air energy here. And this card represents absolute defeat. You know, the end, ladies and gentlemen, of a painful cycle and a literal or figurative type death from which, ladies and gentlemen, there is no fighting back. All right? Understand that the traditional imagery here shows a figure pinned to the ground by the Ten of Swords. And this depiction is of being utterly overwhelmed here, much like having the strength of 20 men and still being vanquished, if you will. The Ten of Swords, it represents a force so absolute that, you know, all personal resistance is completely futile. Also, ladies and gentlemen, death, water energy, Scorpio energy. Okay? So something is coming to an end as a result of some type of betrayal in your situation that I'm getting. Virgos, if you're liking this reading or if it resonates, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Share it with others to whom you think might benefit, and be sure to press that subscription button, okay? So getting back, ladies and gentlemen, to the death. You know, while almost too literal, this card is also the great equalizer. It kind of strikes kings, baggers, and physically mighty all the same. And the apothecary's reminder that brute human strength is useless against this small vial kind of captures the core philosophy of the death card. It is an inescapable transition that humbles all human power. You know, that's what I'm kind of seeing here. And while death represents a natural, inevitable transition and cycle, the Tower represents the violent, shocking drop off of the poison itself. Okay? And we could consider as well the Four of Cups inverted as well as the Five of Cups. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the poison is a compound dissolved in liquid, okay? Put this in any liquid thing you will, unquote. It ties deeply to the dark, toxic shadows of the element of waters, cups, water energy. So in its most destructive form, it represents consuming something meant to really fulfill you. Love, emotion that instead turns entirely toxic and lethal here. And I feel that many of you have that going on in your situation here. Okay? I'm going to pull another card here to represent the overarching energy here. Okay? We have, ladies and gentlemen, wow. Okay. We have Capulet here. And this card represents fatherly love or controlling dogmatism. So this card connects to someone being very controlling here. And just if we were to read the quote here, it reads, "My child is yet a stranger in the world." So, ladies and gentlemen, this tender quote spoken by Lord Capulet early in Romeo and Juliet, because this comes from Act 1, Scene 2, as he gently tries to delay Paris's courtship of Juliet, it perfectly captures innocence. It captures unblemished potential and the very beginning of a life journey. So it looks like you guys are kind of closing one chapter of your life and moving on to another here that I'm kind of getting. And so if we were to map this to a card in tarot, it would certainly map perfectly with the Fool, right? Because the Fool perfectly embodies the stranger here that's mentioned on this card in the world. The Fool is the blank slate, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? It represents the soul before it is shaped, scarred, or even defined by the world. It is an archetype of pure innocence and naivety. Like Juliet at this moment, the Fool stands at the edge of a cliff, completely unaware of steep drops, the jagged rocks, or the intense storms and tragedies that await them. And it's an unwritten journey, ladies and gentlemen. To be a stranger implies that the world's customs, the world's dangers, and expectations haven't touched you yet. The Fool walks with an open heart and with no baggage, ladies and gentlemen, viewing the world not with fear, but with pure, unblemished openness. Okay? We could also match this with the Page perfectly. The Page. Okay? Particularly the Page of Cups here. Because this card naturally represents youth, it represents messages and new beginnings. But the Page of Cups is uniquely aligned with Capulet's description here, as you're seeing here. Okay? This card represents a very gentle, sensitive, and dreaming young soul. They hold a cup with a fishing popping out of it, as shown in the Page of Cups, for those of you who are aware of that card. A symbol of wonder and a childlike imagination. They have not yet been hardened by the heartbreak, by the betrayal, or societal pressures. They are a gentle stranger to the harsher realities of emotional life here. And we also can match this to the Ten of Cups, because from a parental perspective, this card represents the idyllic, protected family bubble. Because when Capulet calls Juliet a stranger to the world, ladies and gentlemen, he is speaking from a place of fear, parental shielding. The Ten of Cups, then, is that safe harbor of home, of childhood, and of domestic peace. The sanctuary you build to kind of keep the outside world from rushing in too quickly. And then we have an underlying irony here, While Capulet views his daughter through the lens of the Fool or a gentle Fool Page, longing to kind of keep her safe within his Ten of Cups, the tragedy, ladies and gentlemen, of the play is how violently and rapidly the world forces her to grow up, skipping childhood straight into the heaviest lessons of the major arcana. All right? So now let's go on and just revisit your past here and just see what Spirit has when it comes to your past. Virgos, once again, if you are enjoying the reading, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, share it with others to whom you think might benefit, and be sure to press that subscription button so that each and every one of you receives future readings. So you have, time to say farewell, goodbye. You hit the road, Jack, here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm seeing with this card, certainly you said farewell to somebody that I'm seeing here. And this might, for some of you, it might have been recently. Because this card is all about saying farewell. And as the quote reads here, will thou be gone? It is not just near day. It was the nightingale and not the lark that pierced the fearful hollow of thine ear. All right. So this iconic plea, ladies and gentlemen, spoken by Juliet in Act 3, Scene 5, is steeped in heavy denial, a longing to really pause time and the deep shadow of impending danger. The lovers have just spent their one and only night together, and dawn brings a brutal reality. Romeo is banished, and if he stays, he dies. Juliet tries desperately to convince him that the bird they hear is the nightingale, the bird of darkness and privacy, rather than the lark, the herald of mourning and separation. So in the tarot, this liminal ancient space between night and day, where things are not what they seem and fear creeps in, maps beautifully to both a major illusion, ladies and gentlemen, and a specific minor torment here. It also matches beautifully, ladies and gentlemen, with the moon here, because the moon, ladies and gentlemen, is the ultimate archetype for this exact moment of romantic delusion. Okay, can you kind of see yourself in a moment of confusion when you were with someone in the past here? Shifting shadows and emotional vulnerability here. Okay? The moon is the card of deception, we've come to understand, intuition, and mistaking one thing for another. So you thought your person was someone else because probably this person lied to you, and it turned out to be something totally different. So Juliet is trying to warp reality, convincing Romeo and herself that the morning sun is just a trick of the light and the lark is a nightingale. Under the light of the moon, the boundaries of truth blur. Okay? The moon represents our deepest anxieties, our subconscious fears, and the wild imagination that takes over in the dark. Juliet explicitly notes that the bird's song pierced the fearful hollow of thine eye. The sound strikes terror because deep down they both know the truth. And in the tarot, the moon can represent a private, instinctual, and deeply emotional world that kind of exists entirely separate from the harsh, structured rules of the daytime sun. Okay, society, family feuds, banishment laws. Juliet is begging to stay in the safety of the lunar world. Just a little longer here that I'm seeing here. Okay? We could also match this to the Two of Swords because it represents a state of suspension. So we have water energy and air energy that's showing here. Okay? Within your situation here. And perhaps these two energies were the ones that you had to let go here. I felt that it was a karmic type situation I'm feeling where the both of you had a lot of communication problems. Because if we were to pair the Two of Swords, it represents a state of suspension, of stalemate, and a fierce refusal to really see the truth. Again, denial in some way. So the traditional imagery shows a blindfold figure at, we know, ladies and gentlemen, holding two heavy swords or stuck in a place. So Juliet and Romeo are trapped in this exact energy, which I feel you were, paralyzed by a choice that you couldn't avoid. Blindfolding yourself to the rising sun, because looking at the reality of mourning requires making a devastating, heartbreaking decision, which some of you had a hard time making, I'm getting. And then we could match this to the Two of Cups inverted. So while the upright Two of Cups is the card of soulmates and perfect union, the balcony scene, right? The inverted or shadowed side of this card represents a forced, painful separation that might have come up, which is one you endured, Virgos. It is an agonizing moment where the private, beautiful bond of two people is violently disrupted by outside forces, or someone tried to wedge him or herself into your situation, which caused a lot of this confusion. Understand that Juliet's frantic speech is a desperate attempt to cling to the upright, beautiful connection before the dawn flips their world upside down. All right, so let's go on and just see where you are presently, ladies and gentlemen, and then we'll give you a future outcome card here. We have the masquerade ball here. So some type of celebration or something is ahead for you guys here that I'm getting here. Okay? Because this card is about a night of passion, embracing a whole new identity. So I feel that if you are in an existing situation, you might be trying to improve your situation. Or for those of you who have separated from someone, I'm seeing you connecting with someone new here. So let's go on and just read the quote here. We have, "Go girl, seek happy nights to happy days. Nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance." Okay? So this lively, bustling line actually kind of strings together two separate moments of enthusiastic encouragement from Act 1 of Romeo and Juliet. The first half, ladies and gentlemen, is the nurse sending Juliet off to the Capulets' feast with an earthly, boisterous blessing. Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. And the second half is Ben Voili and Mercatui playfully dragging a brooding, lovesick Romeo out of his melancholy so he could really join the party. Nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance. So both half of this quote beat with the exact same vibrant pulse. Youthful celebration, social joy, moving in the pursuit of pleasure. Okay, you see how that works? So in the tarot, the card that ultimately matches perfectly is the Three of Cups, right? So I'm seeing you guys celebrating, but still there may be a third party in your situation here. For some of you, it's not all of you, for some of you. Okay? Because this is the quintessential card of good times, dancing, and social harmony. So either you just went to a party or I'm seeing you doing something that's worth or it's giving you cause for celebration here. Okay? Because the traditional imagery of the Three of Cups shows the three figures raising their cups in a toast surrounded by bountiful harvest. You know, it represents pure, unadulterated joy, friendship, and celebration. It is a card, ladies and gentlemen, of seeking happy nights, putting worries aside to enjoy the company of others, to drink, to laugh, and to be merry. You know, and the figures of the Three of Cups, ladies and gentlemen, are almost depicted in the motion, actually dancing in a circle here. You know, Benvolio and Mercatui insistence that Romeo shake off his heavy depression and physically join the dance floor is the exact medicine of this card. It commands you to step out of your isolation and lose yourself in the collective rhythm of life. Okay? So that's what I'm seeing here. And it also connects beautifully also with the Four of Wands here, ladies and gentlemen. That merriment that you're seeing here, festivals and parties. It represents a welcoming, safe space to kind of let your hair down and celebrate a milestone. So that's what I'm seeing presently here, you know. And the Capulets feast, where both of these lines converge, is a classic Four of Wands setting, a grand house, ladies and gentlemen, open up for music, masquerade, as well as revelry, where community members come together to share joy in the moment. Okay? So let's go on and just give you your last card here. We have Dream. Wow. And this card, ladies and gentlemen, is all about prophecy, hint, guidance, oracle, reveal, and symbolize here. You know? And so the message on this card is, I dreamt my lady came and found the dead and breathed such life with kisses and my lips that I revived and was an emperor. Okay? So this stunning bittersweet line opens in Act 5, Scene 1, Romeo is in exile in Mantua, waking up from a dream that feels like a beautiful, triumphant premonition. The tragic irony, of course, is that it completely inverts the reality that is about to hit him minutes later when he learns of Juliet's death. This quote reads together a complex tapestry, okay, of themes. Profound transformation, resurrection through love, a dramatic rise to supreme power, and the ethereal nature of dreams. So in the tarot, this card is totally a mix of total rebirth and absolute sovereignty. So I would say judgment here, ladies and gentlemen. Judgment, you know. And with judgment here, I feel that you're going to have to make some type of decision, between two that might arise for you guys. It's all about an awakening, a resurrection, you know. So Romeo Dream is a literal depiction of the judgment archetype. He is dead, stagnant, and gone, but a powerful loving forces reaches down to breathe life back into his lips, waken his soul. In a spiritual sense, this card represents a second chance here. So you can understand how someone is going to try to attempt to come back for a second chance. And you're going to have to make a decision between two. Being redeemed, restored to kind of be back to your true self. Romeo feels that Juliet's love has the divine power to conquer physical death itself here, with this card. And Emperor, fire energy also might be connected to your situation here. But I feel that in the end, you're going to move forward, I'm kind of feeling, because the hidden shadow of this card is the death inverted here, because there is a kind of ghostly undercurrent here. A dream where you are dead and then kissed back to life is a beautifully manifestation of death inverted. It represents a refusal to let the end be the end. And psychological loop where love attempts to undo the finality of the grave. So the ultimate tragedy of the tarot match into Romeo's dream is a mirror image of really what actually happens at the end of the play, but with the roles finally fatality scrambled here, or fatally, because Juliet finds him dead, kisses his lips to find the poison still warm, but no amount of breath can revive him, leading her to join him in the dark. Okay? So, like I said, this might be a very difficult decision for you guys to do. I feel that someone doesn't want something to end. Someone wants to win at all costs. Someone refuses to let something end here, but you're going to have to be like I said, with that emperor, and show leadership abilities and make a decision. So with that said, Virgos, this is your reading. I certainly hope it offered food for thought. Be sure to like and share, subscribe if you've yet to subscribe, and should any of you wishes to have a more personalized reading, you certainly may access my website to schedule and or to purchase. Thanks so much for your time. Have a blessed day now.